Page. Oh, okay, there we go. All right, so now we're back to Hosea. I'm going to take a little bit different approach to these last three verses in Hosea chapter 10. You know, we've been taking a look at the helical loop and how things then pertain or are similar to what's going on today and things, but we're going to take this to a different layer in the cake, um, because these are really good verses to look at from a personal application point of view. Um, so before we do, let's consider. Let's talk to our Elohim and then we'll take a look at Hosea. I hope this is right, Hosea part 34, because I've slept since the last one. At least once that I know of. So, Father, thank you for the opportunity to study your word. Thank you, Father, for the opportunity to learn how to get better connected with you, listen to you, and not spend so much time listening to ourselves. Father, we thank you for your word, and we ask that you'll open our eyes, open our ears, and open our hearts so we can see, hear, and understand your word and your spirit. In the name of Yahushua, amen. So, is there ever a possibility that you tend to get into your own way when you're trying to accomplish something? Or better yet, here's one that I know that I'm guilty of, so I'll confess that I want to do something. I have it planned out that this is the way I'm going to do it. But I'm going to pray about it. And I pray about it, and then I do it the way I planned out that I was going to do it, not necessarily waiting for a response to listen. And then if I did get a response to say, dude, that's not a good idea, would I listen to that response? Or since I've already convinced myself that this is what I want to do, would I just go ahead and go on with my plans to do it, even though I didn't plan just right because there's a brick wall there that I didn't see, that if I'd have listened, I would have avoided because I would have had to take a few extra steps. So this is kind of what this lesson is about, and it plays out with Israel. You know, we call it Ephraim, the 10 tribes, and what's going on with them. They're this is directed towards a period of time where the last king of Israel, Hosea, is on the throne, and they're about to be smashed by Shalmaneser. They try to make this pact with Egypt, and Egypt kind of backs out and kind of leaves them hanging, and all of a sudden they're taken into captivity. So well, I guess I should go ahead and read it. I'll probably just repeat everything I've just said, but that's okay. So this lesson will consider the final three verses in chapter 10. What is the cost of exchanging Elohim's will for our own is a question that we'll consider within these verses. So historically, the northern kingdom, known as Ephraim, is in rapid decline. They continue to worship the golden calves of Jeroboam. They've added in the worship of the Baal of Canaan, and they've got an affinity for the fertility goddess Ashtaroth as well. So chapter 10 is part of a discourse that outlines exactly why Yahuwah is rejecting the northern kingdom. And basically in chapter 10 we get these are the grounds for the divorce. We're still playing the divorce card, the unfaithful wife thing, and so these are the grounds for the divorce. And if we consider these are the grounds of the divorce, we could throw another question in here. How many times do I allow myself to become divorced from my Elohim? So the northern kingdom is a vassal state of Assyria at this point in history, and has been paying a tribute. So thinking that they're stronger than they are, Israel is going to attempt a revolt seeking aid from Egypt that would be promised but never delivered. The result would be the exile of the peoples of the northern kingdom. So we could take these verses and consider them from a helical time standpoint and consider how today's religious establishment is doing in line with the Northern Kingdom. But I kind of consider this particular piece of history, I didn't call it a story, this particular factual piece of history, that is important to us at a very personal level, one that affects our lives and can also affect the plans that Elohim has set in motion for our lives indirectly or indirectly. And in this, we can consider that my action or inaction can affect my life if there's a particular plan in motion for my life from Elohim. But if Elohim has a plan in motion for someone else's life, and then I interfere with that because I think I know better and I know what needs to be done, then I also upset the balance in those plans for that other person as well, because I can interfere with what Elohim has planned for that person. So these verses illustrate how we get in the way of progress, the progress that Yahuwah our Elohim places in our paths for our success and well-being. So from these verses we will ask, how often do we think that we are stronger than we are, and then attempt to force the timing of Elohim to suit our own agenda? How often do we seek assistance from the very things that keep us in or put us into bondage because we seek to rebel? These are just lessons from the history that's going on. They were looking to Egypt to help them against Assyria. Assyria from Asher means a step. The step in, we consider a step in the direction, one step at a time, but now I'm looking at the things that keep me in bondage to help me to move forward on these steps is a concept that we could kind of think of from considering the names themselves. So we're going to consider the last three verses of Hosea chapter 10 from a slightly different point of view. We start with verse 13 that says, "You have plowed wickedness, you have reaped iniquity, you have eaten the fruit of lies, for you did trust in your way, in the multitude of your mighty men." So let's first consider the phrase, "You have plowed wickedness." The word used for "you have plowed" is harashetem, that from the root harash also means to devise and to plot. This word also means to be deaf and to be mute. So from this we can look at ourselves and ask, how often am I silent in prayer and deaf to the voice of Elohim as I devise and plot my course? And this is something we talked about in the beginning. I've made up my mind, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to pray about it because it is a, what do we call it? I'm going to pray about it because it's something that I have to do. It's a step in the process, but I'm praying for the external show of it. I'm not really praying to pay any attention as to what the answer might be to that prayer. Because again, if I've made up my mind and I pray and something says that's not a good idea, I can't tell you how many times in my life I've said, yeah, but it'll work. And I do it because I'm a human being, and that's what human beings do. So the word used for wickedness is resha, that from its very makeup illustrates to us our perception, there's the ayin, of resh, authority. So from the shin in this, we can consider asking, is my course of action based on my point of view, or is it based on the enticements of the Satan, or is it based on Elohim's point of view? And here is where the enticements of the Satan start to wreak havoc on us, is that oftentimes I'm going to take action, the action that I want to take, because I want to get somewhere and I want to get there right away. And the enticements of the Satan are that there is the goal and it's right there. I can reach out and touch it. But I don't happen to notice that there's broken glass and barbed wire and a brick wall in the way. So this is something that the enticements of the Satan make me jump into things where maybe I shouldn't jump. So the word resha specifically means to be wrong. So it really doesn't mean wickedness, it simply means to be wrong. Can I be wrong about something, especially if I don't seek Elohim in prayer? And am I deaf to the voice of his Ruach? We're not necessarily deaf to the voice of his Ruach. We hear it just fine, but we just don't listen because we are so much smarter than our Father. And, we go back to our childhood, if mother or father say, do this, and I say, no, I'm not going to do that because it's dumb, Mom. Not realizing that it's the best course of action, so I do it my way, and not only do I get in trouble with her, but then I've messed up everything else in the process. And that's something that we pay attention to. The next phrase is, you have reaped iniquity. So the word for iniquity is avlata, that means injustice, but the root of this word is aval, that means to be wrong, to deviate from what is right, and to act wrongfully. The word for you have reaped is ketzarem, that from the root ketzar means to be impatient, to be troubled, and to be grieved. So here's another question. Is it possible to deviate from what is right and act wrongfully because we are impatient, troubled, or grieving? I'm very sad. And this is the worst part about it, is when we are sad, when we're down, when we're anxious, when we have these emotions, we'll find out in the name Shalmaizer, that when we have these emotions, we tend to shut off our spiritual connection and do what we want to do because we're looking to feel better. And sometimes doing what we need to feel better isn't always necessarily the right thing to do. Although that gallon of Bluebell was fine for the first 30 minutes. So if so, we may consider that we too have eaten the fruit of lies. So let's consider the word for lies. In this case, it's chachash, that means deception, but it also means disappointment. The word peri means fruit, but it also means the product of. So do I act in haste, making the wrong decisions because I am consumed by the deceiving product of my disappointment? So there we go. Things don't go right, and all of a sudden we're making the wrong choices. And things keep going wrong. So this is kind of a lesson for us. And what it shows us, what this particular, I guess the way this turned out, is that the Torah, the prophets, the Bezorah even, isn't all about all that God stuff and religious stuff and I've got to raise my hands. It gives us practical life applications. They call it a Torah for a reason. It's a book of instruction. So consider what we've just looked at. We can reverse the phrase for you did trust in your way into a question. Did you trust in your way? We often do because we feel overly confident and because we're not looking at the big picture of what Elohim's plan may be in the situation that we're trying to control. This illustrates an idea to consider where our trust is in the phrase, in the multitude of your mighty men. The word used for mighty men is giborecha, that from the root gabar means strength, power, and greatness, as well as to prevail. So do you believe that Yahuwah Elohim exists? And if so, does Elohim prevail in your life, or do you? Okay. So let's consider the consequences of being wrong from the perspective of verse 14. Therefore shall a tumult rise among your armies, and all your fortresses shall be spoiled, as Shalman spoiled Beth Arbel in the day of battle. The mother was dashed in pieces with her children. Wow, that sounds serious. This was an actual incident that took place. But let's consider the first phrase. Therefore shall a tumult arise among your armies. This phrase begins with the word vekam, that means to arise. The root of this word is kum, that aside from arise also means to endure, as in to endure difficulty, which is a very mild definition of the word used for tumult, which is sha'on. This word means an uproar of confusion and comes from the root sha'ah, that means to crash into ruin, destruction, and desolation. We take it one step further, that we have a word we call shoah, that means to bring to ruin or to bring to nothing. And this is the root word that's used in the third commandment, that you shall not make the name of Yahuwah your Elohim shoah. Okay? So this will arise from all of your armies. The Hebrew of the phrase simply says be'amecha, meaning among your people. Literally, in your people. The word be'amecha means in your people, but the root amam means dark or dim. And then we have the root ayin for both of these, or for amecha, am is people, and amam that represents perception. So again, we have this dark or dim perception. So what we can consider from the phrase is our crashing into a ruinous situations is due to what is contained in our dark or dim perception. Do I have all the facts? Because oftentimes we go straight to guns without understanding exactly what's going on, and we kind of tend to make things worse sometimes. All the time. Anyway. Depends on whose perspective it is. The husband's perspective, it's not that bad. From the missus' perspective, well, you got some splaining to do, Ricky. Okay. So what we consider from verse 13 is that when we are mute and fail to seek our Elohim's guidance, if I'm going to pray, and if I'm just going to pray for show, then I'm really not saying anything, so I might as well be mute. And when we are deaf to his Spirit's guidance, our perception is based on whatever enticement is waved in front of us. The result is a wrong decision that leads to a crash at the end. So let's consider the phrase, and all your fortresses shall be spoiled. So we go first to the word vekol, that comes from the root kol, that means all, as well as wholly and completely. So this is going to affect a lot of things. The next word is misarecha. I had a good time writing this down. I wrote it down like 3 or 4 times and said, is that right? I can't even make my mouth move like that. Mitzvarecha, that is used to say your fortresses, but the root of this word is mitzvar, that aside from fortress, means a stronghold. And the root, it comes from the root ba'ar, I get there eventually, batzar, that refers to something that is cut off and inaccessible. So the fortress really doesn't seem to be all that much of a protection place if it's someplace that's cut off and inaccessible. So we come up with a question. Do you put up walls when you are set in your own opinion? Do you become so distanced from any other input, including that of Elohim, that you're cut off from much needed truthful and correct input, that you become inaccessible? Have you ever met that kind of person? This is the way it is. I'm right. You're wrong. Everyone around you is wrong. The planet is wrong. And if there were people on Mars, they'd be wrong too, because my opinion is what matters. And you try to explain to this person, this isn't going to work. I've had a few bosses like this. You really shouldn't put those 2 wires together. It's not a good idea, but oh, there it went. So, all right. So if the study seems a bit uncomfortable to this point, it may be time to consider where you are and check your course. The word for spoiled is yushad. The word keshod is also used in this verse, and it's interesting that it uses yushad, and then right after it has keshad that basically mean the same thing. And it kind of makes you wonder, why do they use the same word, basically, two different forms, one right after the other? Yushad, among other things, is the word for robber, someone who steals from you. It also means to destroy and to devastate. The word keshod also refers to robbery, as well as havoc and ruin. The root of this word is shud, both of them, shud, that refers to swelling up with insolence and arrogance. So what we consider here is that our prideful arrogance and insolence, when we close ourselves off to any other input, robs us of truth and enhances the havoc in our lives, as well as the ruin and the devastation that it causes. So, I don't know if taking the wrong steps in doing things has ever caused you a whole lot of grief. Normally that's usually what comes from saying this is the right way to go, and then going in that direction and hitting a wall, and what we said earlier is to crash and literally crash into pieces. But it's something to consider. What am I missing in my decision process? And this is the part where sincerely having a conversation with Elohim and sincerely wanting to listen comes in. Because I'm going to get that spiritual input that says, this is probably not a good idea, or have you considered this, or something you may never hear from Elohim, I'm not really quite sure, why don't you go talk to this person? Because the whole point of everything might be the very fact that I need to go talk to this person, because this person is the whole cause of everything else that's going on, is that this person needs someone to talk to, and I am the vessel that's been chosen to talk to this person. But if I go on careening and don't bother to pray, don't bother to listen, and go on with my plans, then this person and the plan that Elohim has set in motion for this person is affected because I don't listen to where I'm supposed to what I'm supposed to do. Everybody with me? Okay. Good. All right. So the next phrase is, as Shalman spoiled Beth Arbel in the day of battle. Sounds serious. The name Shalman means fire worshipper. This is a shortened form of the name Shalmaeser. The word for fire is Esh. Fire represents wrath and negative or hostile emotions. So here is a worshiper of anger, depression, anxiety, all those things that we worship when something happens, and I can do all things through me who worships me. I don't bother to have a sit-down conversation with the boss. I go straight to guns. So Shalmaeser represents this concept of these negative emotions that are floating around. So the story behind this particular Assyrian king is that he is the one who demanded payment from the last king of Israel, Hoshea, who was on the throne. This is another Hosea. It's not the prophet Hosea. Okay. Now, on the throne, where do we go? Hosea was on the throne. Hosea went back on his promise and tried to form an alliance with Egypt and revolted. Egypt never showed up. Israel was taken into captivity. So based on the historical fact, the history that we read here, we can ask, do we take the deliverance and the restoration of Yahuwah our Elohim for granted? I've got a great relationship with my Elohim, and because I have a great relationship with my Elohim, I can do all things through me who strengthens me, because Elohim's not going to let me fall when I decide to do what I want to do without discussing it. Should I discuss things with Yahuwah Elohim? There's certain things that I should discuss, and there's certain things I shouldn't discuss. I know what kind of toilet paper I like, so I buy that toilet paper. I don't need a discussion. If I'm going to get involved in a major enterprise that's going to require a lot of effort, a lot of energy, and affect a lot of people, then it's something that perhaps I might want to have a conversation with him. Or if it's going to affect my family directly or indirectly, my relationship directly or indirectly, of course. So do we take the deliverance and the restoration of Yahuwah our Elohim for granted? Worse yet, do we expect and demand deliverance and restoration from Yahuwah our Elohim when we've cut ourselves off from him in our pride? Everybody catch that one? Do we demand deliverance and restoration when we have cut ourselves off from him because of our pride? I've made my choice. It's fallen apart. I demand that you deliver me. Not, oops, I didn't listen to you. I'm sorry. This is a mess. Show me what I need to do so that I can start taking the steps to correct it. Instead of saying, I'm redeemed. You promised me restoration. Jesus died for my sins. So you have to fix it. No. I've struck the rock twice. I need to figure it out and make teshuvah and then humbly approach my Elohim. So that's a big question in that one. The name Beth Arbel means the house of Elohim's ambush. I can just see Elohim crouched behind the bushes waiting to jump out there and... Okay. So the root of Arbel is Areb, that actually means to lie in wait. This word represents being patient and waiting for something to come along or occur. We could actually say that it's the house of the patience of Elohim. Fortunately for us, Elohim seems to be very patient. The word that separates these two names is melechama, that means to battle. The root of this word is lacham, that means to fight. But it also means to take in nourishment, and it's a similar root of the word lechem that means bread. So the paradox that we find between Shalman and Bet Arbel is a question of, do I take the deliverance and restoration of Yahuwah Elohim, my Elohim, for granted when I'm blindly prideful and arrogant, fighting against him to get my way? Or am I willing to wait for Elohim and be nourished by his direction before I take action, waiting to see what transpires in his timing? So, I want patience. I just want it now. And that's the way we are. I want this right away. I want to go from point A to point B. I want to bypass everything in the middle. But that's not the way it works. You know. Am I patient enough to go through the steps that my Elohim points me to, even though they're way out of the way and they seem like they're kind of ridiculous? And we did a diagram on the board going to point A to point B, but prayerfully considered, we have to go to point E first, and then come back to point D, and then go to point C, then go to point B, and then we can get to where we want to go. We want to go from A right to Z right away. So this is a question that we really need to consider, is, am I fighting against Elohim because I want it right away? And this goes back to the question of the shin. Am I seeing things from my point of view that's based on the enticements of the Satan? You can have it now. You just have to use the old term, you just have to sell your soul to me. Or do I see things from Elohim's point of view and understand that this isn't the right time, the right timing? I need to take a few other steps first before I move into where I need to be. So, considering that, we respond to this statement by saying, there often isn't time to wait for Elohim to respond. You ever heard that? Have you ever said that? I don't have time to wait on God. I need the answer now. So, I don't have time to wait for Elohim to respond. Is it possible that there isn't any time for Elohim to respond because we don't take the time to ask for his direction? I don't have time to wait for Elohim, but I haven't bothered to sit down with a cup of tea and have a conversation with Elohim to find out if I really do have time